particular nation or a particular group of people. We generally refer to such people as anti-royalists. But coming to Benin as a case study, some people over the years believe that if their political ideas are not met, every single institution that seems to be opposing to their political views must be brought down to their knees. So what you have, if they are local disrespect to the throne, is just a bunch of very hungry people who feeds from the largesse of government, and inherently they believe that whatever the monarch represents is stampeding their selfish interest in benefiting from the current government. Not that it is coming from a real contest of anti-royal insurgents. Basaki. Well, like I said, he probably did not really understood what the palace represents in the lives of the people. Maybe probably he grew up, a better part of his life was lived in the western part of Nigeria. And secondly, it was more of showing of political strength. You know, I always believe that when a Benin man has attained a particular status, most especially political status in his life, the next thing he or she will want to do is to challenge the authority of the Oba of Benin. So whatever fracas that happened between the palace of the Oba of Benin, the epigenesis of the entire matter was the artifact. Every of these opinions that I'm giving are solemnly my opinion. It is not the opinion of the palace or opinion of another person. It is Imagine Odowa's opinion. It is true that I felt at the beginning that some names were omitted. I was the one who even raised the alarm in the first place. And I also felt that there were about 1 or 2 names that were added to the list that was not even supposed to be there. But that's my opinion. It is not the opinion of the palace. It is not the opinion of another person. Answering that question, there were 2 criteria for what I was told. Those whose name appeared on the list. Will not discover that there were some people whose name appeared on the list who later apologized, but they were still suspended. So I now raised the alarm. But I was now later told that there was another criteria that I was not aware of. Because the criteria was those whose name appeared on the list and those who physically took picture with His Majesty. With the governor, the then governor. And there was another criteria that was used. Those who received salaries till December last year.
Thanks for clicking on this channel. Please subscribe to FO's blog history and click on the notification button so that whenever we upload a new video you will be notified. The 3 criteria used for the suspension of the Enigie, including Igbanke Enigie in Benin Kingdom. According to Mr. Izadawa, nobody disrespects the Oba of Benin. It is a figment of the imagination of a very untrained few of what you now call the modern trends of a typical of what the black race has now become. Where a lot of people are now destitute of morality, this is not only applicable to Benin. It is applicable to every other culture within Africa where people believe that their opinion about a particular matter must subjugate the laid-down historical traditional rules. In all societies in the world, there are usually a group of people who call themselves anti-royalists. They don't believe the world should be governed by a monarchical system. They feel that the monarchical system hampers the development of a particular nation or particular group of people, which we generally refer to as anti-royalists. Coming to Benin as a case study, some people over the years believe that if their political ideas are not met, every single institution that seems to oppose their political view must be brought down to their knees. If there are local disrespect to the throne is just a bunch of very angry people who feed from the largesse of government, and inherently they believe that whatever the monarch represents is stampeding their selfish interest in benefiting from the current government. Not that it is coming from a real contest of anti-royal insurgents, he stated. Mr. Izadawa reveals the 3 criteria used in suspending those Enigie, including Igbanke Enigie. 1. Those whose names appear in the list submitted to Godwin Obaseki. 2. Those who took a picture with Godwin Obaseki. 3. Those who received salaries till December last year, December 2024. So you cannot say that you are not a part of them, but you were still receiving a salary for over a year. And the law is that you, as an Enigie, are supposed to receive a salary from the Benin Traditional Council, BTC, he said. He also said that the Enigie were created by the Oba of Benin. They did not create themselves. It is the Oba that has their lifeline. If the Oba says you are not who you think you are, the government will not have the power to recognize you, which the Oba of Benin has not recognized. That was what they failed to understand. There was a window period that was open for almost 1 year for the Enigie to come out and denounce their involvement, if their names were on the list submitted to Godwin Obasiki's government. Some Enigie took advantage of that window period. When there is a great injustice, neutrality is a curse, he added. The Enigie is at the bottom of the strata in the classification of chiefs in the Benin Kingdom. The Enigie started seeing themselves as traditional ruler, which they are not. The Oba of Benin is the only traditional ruler recognized by law in Edo South. Please sit down and watch this explosive interview with Mr. Izadawa.
Global respect and local disregard. The Oba of Benin is widely revered across the world, yet some Edo citizens do not extend the same level of respect. What are the historical factors behind this paradox, sir?
Well, I don't think that when you ask the question, local disrespect, nobody disrespects the Oba of Benin. It is a figment of the imagination of a very, very unraised few of what you now call the modern trends. It's a typical of what the black race now become, where a lot of people are now destitute of morality. That is not only applicable to Benin, it is applicable to every other cultures within Africa, where people believe that their opinions about a particular matter must subjugate a laid down historical traditional rules. Well, in all climes of the world, in all societies of the world, there are usually groups of people who call the anti-royalist. They don't believe that the world should be governed by a monarchical system. They feel that the monarchical system hampers the development of a particular nation or a particular group of people. We generally refer to such people as anti-royalists. But coming to Benin as a case study, some people over the years believe that if their political ideas are not met, every single institution that seems to be opposing to their political views must be brought down to their knees. So what you have, if they are local disrespect to the throne, is just a bunch of very hungry people who feeds from the largesse of government, and inherently they believe that whatever the monarch represents is stampeding their selfish interest in benefiting from the current government. Not that it is coming from a real contest of anti-royal insurgents. I am a student of history, and I do not believe that if anybody disagree with the opinions of His Royal Majesty Monobane Dukwa Kolokolo Baiware II, it means that it is a local disrespect. Over time, all throughout the times of history, from the turn of this second dynasty, starting with Oba Romea, which is historically believed to be the first Oba of Benin, currently the 40th Oba of Benin, which is Oba Iwari II. There has always been people who oppose the palace of the Oba of Benin. It's what makes the monarchy system unique. It is not an autocratic government wherefore people don't have opinion. In Benin, we'll usually say in our I wouldn't say local parable. Edo language is a universal language. It's a global language. In our global language, Edo language, we usually say that what that means is that everybody cannot sleep and face the same direction. So that means we believe within, it is enshrined in our DNA that people must have divergent opinions about some certain things. And it is what has kept Benin global. It is what has made Benin very, very, very unique. I can easily give a lot of historical examples. During Obaewa, where a lot of chiefs, high-ranking chiefs, rebelled against the palace because they believed that what that monarch at that time stood for was not for the good of the people, even if whether their opinions were right or wrong, but everything is still boiled down to people being having a particular opinion about the monarch. It is their opinion. Wherefore, you have an opposing figure, you always have a supporting figure. The same thing happened to in the 50s or in the 40s. There were a lot of elites in Benin who kicked against Oba Akenzwa II, who is the grandfather of the current monarch. They wanted the formulations of the colonial ideas. The Oba kicked against it, that you cannot formulate your colonial ideas upon the land, wherefore we have always had our customs, our traditions over the years. So there were riots between the monarch and some very elites. But in that same contest, there were also great, powerful Benins, like the late Iyasher of Benin, Humphrey Omo Osaige, who stood his ground and said that the ways of the Edo people has always been that the Oba has the final say. And eventually, what the Oba said eventually became the final say. But in all of these contests, quoting from how the history has always emerged, it seems like every time there's always an opposing ideas, the palace is always in the side of victory. So whether they are local disrespect, which I believe that the disrespect that comes from locally, it's more of like politically inclined. These people does not have an idea to oppose a monarch. Some of these people does not even have the history, doesn't even know anything about this land. What they are fighting for over the time is always their political interest. All of these people become so opinionated over a certain matters they don't even understand the jack and jill about, and it tends to malform their way of thinking. It's basically self-interest. If you actually remove their interest, if it is not opposing to their interest, it would not, they would not have this, what you guys tagged a local disrespect. But they were clearly different people over the time of history who actually had a, a strong ideological clarity of opposing the monarch, which might not even come from the context of it might not even come from the context of being self-centered. All right, like I have said, if they are local disrespect, these people really do not understand why they disrespect the monarch. It's just the figment of their imagination. Their self-interest is not being served, and that's why they say all the matter of rubbish that they say. But in all of this, the palace remains what it has always been for 2070 years since the creation of the Benin monarch starting in the year 40 BC. It has always remained and it will always remain. For those who really understood what it represents in the lives of every Edoma, will continue to uphold the palace and put it in the pedestal of the greatness that it truly represents. And that's what we, the real Benins, actually will continue to fight for. So thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, sir, for that. And our next question is clash between the palace and the former governor. There were reports of disrespect by the former governor towards the Oba of Palace from a historical perspective. What led to this situation and what were the complications?
Okay, I'll speak about the complications much later. Yeah, it is, let nobody try to deaden the entire situations. There was fracas between the palace and the, should I continue? So there was fracas between the palace and the immediate past governor of Edo State, Mr. Godwin Nogagase Obaseki. Well, like I said, he probably did not really understood what the palace represents in the lives of the people. Maybe probably he grew up, a better part of his life was lived in the western part of Nigeria. And secondly, it was more of showing of political strength. You know, I always believe that when a Benin man has attained a particular status, most especially political status in his life, the next thing he or she will want to do is to challenge the authority of the Oba of Benin. So whatever fracas that happened between the palace of the Oba of Benin, the epigenesis of the entire matter was the artifact. The artifact, it's an work, it's an artwork that belongs to the Oba of Benin. First, it does not belong to Edo people. and secondly, it belongs to Edo people. I will explain the context where I say the artifact belongs to Edo people, because in Benin we usually say that Edo Oba Edo. If it is on that context, the artifact belongs to the Edo people. But if it is beyond that context, those carted away stolen artworks belongs exclusively to the Oba of Benin. These artworks were created by the ordination of the Oba of Benin. No artworks prior before the colonial times were created without the knowledge of the Oba of Benin. It is the Oba of Benin that has the prerogative to sanction the creation of these artworks. And when these artworks were all created, they were all stationed in the palace of the Oba of Benin. That is why when you see all photographs that the British took during the invasion 1897, you will never see any photograph where the British took any artwork from any house of any Edoma. All artworks were all stolen. All pictures, all historical archival materials only pointed that those artworks were carted away from the palace of the Oba of Benin. The reason was because it was a capital crime for anybody to have artwork in their various houses. Not like you've seen artworks all over in my house or any other prominent Benin people, like you now see, or even those who are not even Benin, who probably cherish the beautiful art masterpiece of the Edo people. It was a capital crime. It was a treasonable offense for you to have these artworks in your house, except in the palace of the Oba of Benin. So every single thing was carried away. So when the reparation of these artworks started, it has started as far back during the reign of Oba Akenzwa II. So the former state governor trying to give the credit to himself that in his time, that's when these people were trying to bring back those artworks. Some artworks were returned during the time of Oba Akenzwa II. Some artworks were returned during the time of Oba Erediawa of blessed memory. So, but because the current monarch is a diplomatic king, he understood the concept of diplomacy because he was an ambassador to quite a lot of countries ranging from Africa to Europe and across Europe. So he understood the language of how to diplomatically exploit channels to get these things returned. It was during this same time that the Gordon Oba second government came. So, but initially when they were to return this artifact, the governor was interested, the then governor was interested for these artworks to be returned to the Oba of Benin. You've seen a whole lot of videos where he had pledged to support the Benin Royal Museum with 500 million and every other that every artwork has to come to the palace and all of that. But then he never realized that with the artworks, there were reparations. There were quite a whole lot of money that was to come with it. So when he realized that quite a whole lot of money was to come with it, that's when he started to change. That's when he started to feel that whoever receives the artworks, these artifacts, the money goes to. So he needed to start fighting the monarch, find a way to blackmail the monarch, find a way to use to pay a lot of social media people, even across, even contracting a job to some Americans, some black Americans, to try and victimize Benin Kingdom so that these artworks do not return to the Oba. We all saw the game. But the palace, being an ancient institution, beat into the game, getting the federal government to gazette this, to make it as a matter of law that the person who owns this artifact is the Oba of Benin. When that job was done, he went mad. He went mad. Now, is someone who believes that he never loses a battle. The philosophy of the governor, the then governor. That was his philosophy. He never loses a battle. So when he felt he has lost that battle, the next thing he wanted to do was to divide Benin Kingdom. That was what now later led to the Enigie advocacy and all of that. Him trying to use the Enigie to split Benin Kingdom into 7. So indeed, there were issues. Indeed, there were issues that were supposed to be managed, but failure to manage from the elites of Edo land, as well as the governor not heeding the advices that a couple of other prominent Benin people told him about, that this is an artwork, this is a traditional matter. Why not stay clear from it? But in the context of the contest, Edo Giawere, we all stood gallantly supporting the palace like every typical Benin man supposed to do. And eventually we became victorious. Summarized to state at what I have established, that people have tried to disseminate the palace, not the first time, not the 10th time, not the 20th time. But in all of this, the palace always come out victoriously. That was another victory for the palace once again. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Our next question. The rebellion of the Enoges and the Eniges against the palace. What were the underlying reason behind the mass defense by the Enoges and the Eniges against the palace? Was this an isolated event, or has there been historical precedents for such conflicts?
Yes, there are a whole lot of historical precedents for such conflict. This is not the first time a group of people are trying to rebel against a palace. It has always been part, like I said, when there are no rebellion, there are no history. You have to rebel. There has to be precedents over the time. Don't forget, Benin Kingdom is the second oldest surviving kingdom in the world and oldest surviving kingdom in Africa. The contest is surviving. There are older kingdoms in Africa more than Benin Kingdom, only that they didn't survive to these modern times. So, but Benin has survived for over 2017 years, not as a people, but as a kingdom. Always understood. The people precedes the monarch. There's always a people before you have a king. So, but when the kingdom was now established through a centralized government, the Benin is the oldest surviving in Africa, which is about 2070 years. In all of these 2070 years, they have had all the fistulas of trials, all the stages, however you want to put it. They have experienced different trials and they have surmounted it in every single trials that have come. So this was one of the trials that also came during the reign of Obayawari. Now, one thing about Obayawari is that Obayawari tends to have more trials than every Oba of Benin. That's why we say in Benin, the Ewari is the contest at which you measure every other Obas of Benin. So he has to continue to have his own trials. And one of the trials, though he quite early into his reign, crowned October 2016, and in 2022 the entire conflict started. I am in a point of authority to speak about the conflict because I was embroiled in the conflict. It is even a conflict that took me to jail. So if there's any person who can speak on the conflict, I have the authority to speak on this conflict. But now, there are historical precedents. Even in the time of Obayari, there were some Enigie that tried to also break off from Benin Kingdom. So they paid dearly for it. Now, coming to this time of the Enigie. Enigie is singular. Enigie is plural. They are not X. So there's nothing like Enigies and Enogies. Enogie is singular. Enigie is plural. I just for the purpose of the audience, they should understand. Now, like I said, from the question that was asked last before this, when Obaseki had failed, the then governor had failed to get this artifact, the next thing is any clever person, if I was a deterrent like he was, I would do the same. If I fight you, I'm not unable to defeat you. I have to look for other ways to reduce your strength. And how do you reduce the strength of the Oba of Benin? You reduce the strength of the Oba of Benin if you break his kingdom, if you separate him from his people, if you isolate him from his people. So that's what Obaseki wanted to do, to break him from his people, to make him feel, for the people to look at him as a bad king. Although that's where some of the people, the first question that was asked, local disrespect. So he started to enable some people, give them some stipends, some money, to not believe that what does your monarch represent? Well, knowing fully well that the Benins have survived even prior before the colonial masters. The monarch has been the greatest thing God has given to every Adoma. We talk about the Benin artifacts today is because it was an Oba that instituted that legacy. We talk about the Great Benin War today. It is an Oba that instituted that legacy. We talk about the Great Benin Moat today. Every single respect and honor that the Benin man commands today, it is because of the honor that the Oba of Benin commands. The Oba of Benin had too much power amongst his people, but yet there were Obas of Benin that were not really in tandem with the people they had to also face, because who much is given, much is expected. So the then governor did everything to break the kingdom. That is when he had to recruit the Enigie. Now, these Enigie, they have had some mindset before now. The mindset that they have had is that it's a bit tricky, and I hope the viewers understand when I want to break it down. Now, during the reign of Obayari, at the turn when Obayari was the Oba of Benin, Edo had separated from Delta State. Edo and Delta used to be together. We call them Bendel. At the time when they were Bendel, the Benden Traditional Council, the Oba of Benin, who was Oba Akenzo at that time, was the permanent chairman of all the traditional councils in both the present day Edo and Delta. So when Edo now splitted from Delta, now Delta had issues about rotating since the Oba of Benin till date. All the kings in Delta respect that Oba of Benin is the father of everybody. That's because they clearly understood the power of history. Because if you understand history, you understand that there was an Oba of Benin, and outside the Oba of Benin, every other persons around were subjects. All right, nobody was at par with the Oba of Benin at that time of history before the British came in 1897. So they understood that. So they had placed the Oba of Benin at that pedestal of respect. Not that they cannot drag with him, but they understand this history. So at the time when Edo was not created, now every other king remaining in Delta today, they feel that they are peers. It is only Oba of Benin that can be their father, or better still, or however you want to put it, their senior brother, but they cannot share that authority with the Oba of Benin. So when Oba of Benin left, is now in present day Edo State. So then I see every other king in Delta State, they are almost of equal status. So there cannot be anything like permanent chairman or permanent vice chairman. Almost everybody are equal. So it will be rotated amongst themselves who becomes the chairman of the traditional council. But coming to Edo, it is an easy peasy thing. Oba of Benin remain the Edo traditional council, the permanent chairman. Now, when the contemporaries of these Onojis in Esan land now saw what was going on in Delta State, they also now wanted that the chairmanship in Edona should be rotated amongst the traditional rulers. So that means if the Oba of Benin probably becomes the chairman for 5 years, it will be rotated, and Onoji in Esan land will become a permanent chairman. It will rotate maybe an Otaru of Auchi or other very prominent kings in current day Edo will also be permanent chairman. So the Enigie, who is a contemporary of the Onoji in Esa land, they were not saying that over their dead body would they allow that happen. That an Enogie in Benin land is of equal status to an Onoji in Esa land. And in bare historical fact, that is correct. Because it is the way that Oba of Benin created the stool of these Onoji. That is the same way that Oba of Benin created the stool of these Enigie in Edo land. They have the same historical status. But the only difference is the subject to Nigeria constitutional law. While the law recognizes the Onoji in Esa land as a traditional ruler, the law does not recognize any Enogie in Edo land as a traditional ruler. The law only recognizes the Oba of Benin as a traditional ruler, where every other Enogie who has the same traditional status with an Onoji only allow them to become a chief. So now, these Enigie, not to blame them too much, cannot be seen their counterparts having a full status of a traditional ruler, while themselves have a status of just a common traditional chief. So they had wanted in their minds of minds to have a sort of freedom, liberty, to be in the same contest with their contemporaries in the current day Esan land. But they cannot have that privilege except the Oba of Benin grant them that privilege. But Oba of Benin cannot grant them that privilege because they will now have almost equal rights or status with the Oba of Benin. So that's why they were not subjected lower in terms of law to the Onojis in Esa land. But in terms of history and tradition, they are of the same equal status. All right. I hope the viewers understand, because I want to use that one to establish a point. So they have always been that unheeding rancor amongst this Enigie. All right. That they are being denied this status that they are supposed to have by being a traditional ruler. And they have been looking for how to express or realize that their ultimate dream. So the guy who is going to make their dream come to fruition is Godwin Obaseki. Now, Godwin Obaseki already had an intention of reducing the power of the Oba of Benin. Now, there's this Enigie who have always had this rancor for years, even prior before the current monarch was coronated. Now, two interests have now aligned. The governor now willing to promote these people as a traditional ruler from their status as a traditional chief. And these chiefs have always wanted to be a traditional ruler. So this was the underlying issues. Every other thing that they tell you, they are all badadash. Like things like they were not paid salaries, the palace refused to pay them salaries. They said something like that they cannot be kneeling down before the Oba of Benin like every other chiefs. That's because why they say that, part of the underlying issues, why they said that they cannot be kneeling down for the Oba like every other chiefs, is because in the minds of their minds, they don't see themselves as chiefs. They see themselves as traditional rulers, but they are not traditional rulers. The constitution see them as chiefs. The Oba of Benin see them as chiefs, but in their minds of minds, they don't see themselves as chiefs. So everything, they started to have a concept that they are more powerful than the chiefs in the palace of the Oba of Benin. And in the ladder of constitutional classification, because that's what the whole matter went down, the whole matter denigrated to the fact that the palace was taken to court, but these were their interpretations, the interpretations of the law. That if going by the interpretations of the law, they are the lowest ladder of the classification of all the chiefs in the palace. The chiefs in the palace of the Oba Benin is quite huge. All right, if the palace is to assemble all these chiefs today, it will be more than almost all the chiefs of every monarchs in southern Nigeria combined. It's huge because when you look at the classifications of chiefs in Benin, it's huge, very huge, very many of them. So, but they are the very lowest ladder of the classification of chiefs. So when this whole idea came, and they have not had an assurance, sincerely speaking, the government has a power to promote these people recognized by the constitution from being a traditional chief to being a traditional ruler. But the point was, for them to be a traditional ruler, they will have to get the permission of the Oba of Benin, because it is the Oba. They are creations of the Oba of Benin. They did not create themselves. It is the Oba of Benin that created them. It is the Oba of Benin that have their lifeline. If the Oba of Benin says you choose not to be who you think you are, the government will not have the power to recognize you, that which the Oba of Benin has not recognized. That was what they failed to understood. The only fact that since it's the governor has the power of life and death. And that was their biggest Achilles. At the twilight of 2022, 2023, I was always very vocal, telling them that you guys are making one of the greatest mistakes that will haunt your generation for the rest of your life. Don't forget, the governor who you reposing your entire confidence on will soon leave. When he leaves, what becomes the future of your people? What becomes the future of your land? And that's where they make the mistakes. But the underlying issues that you talked about, where what I have just break down, they begin to see themselves as a traditional ruler, whereas they are not traditional ruler. It is only the Oba of Benin that the law recognizes in Edo South, which is you call Benin Kingdom, as the traditional ruler. Why then they were just traditional chiefs, as gazetted by the 1979 Gazette concerning traditional rulers of the then Benin state. I think that's about the brief history of this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. The next question is numbers and scale of the rebellions. How many Enogies and Enigies are officially recognized in Edo South? Of that number, how many actively participated in the rebellion against the palace?
Well, I cannot really give you for a fact how many numbers of Enigie are there. There are so many factors why I can't give you for the fact. There are some Enigie, like my village, they have had an Enigie crisis for almost 100 years. There used to be an Enogie, there were crises about Enogie. So there are some communities like that where the crisis of resolving who an Enogie is have not been fully resolved. There were some communities where Uhurena Laibu. What we meant by Uhure Laibu is there used to be an Enogie. Maybe the Enogie did not give birth to an heir apparent, a son. So they are not instruments to really measure, but from my statistics, there should be about 120 for the ones that are the ones that can still be easily recognizable. But it might be much more or little more than about 120. But whenever I talk about fifth, I usually put it at that range of about 120 in Nigi in Edo land. Originally, when this whole matter started, it was about 90 something of them, about 97 of them that was originally fingered. But along the line, we discovered that those 97 were not some were not oblivious that it is fighting the palace. That was the end game. Some had went to their general Enigie meeting, had a meeting with them, so they took the attendance of all the Enigie that attend, and they discussed general matters that concerns Benin Kingdom and all that. So some the attendance were taken. So some of the leaders of that Enigie that called for that meeting took the attendance and took it to government house without the knowledge of some persons who had attended at the first instance. So they had another other subsequent meetings. So they added the first list of the first meeting without the prior notice of these people. These people, some of them that came, not knowing what was the end game. All right. So that's what made the original list quite very robust for about 90 something. So, but in the infinite wisdom of His Majesty, He now said that I understand how these things are going, but what you need to do is that if you feel that you don't have a hand in it, but your name appeared on the list, you come out publicly. You understand? So what I want to say here, I want people to be able to bear witness between God and ancestors. For those of us who believe in our ancestors, is that there was a window period that was open for almost 1 year. If you know you don't have a hand in this, come out and say, though my name appeared on this list, I do not have a hand. Go to ITV, do a video, write a letter officially to the palace. That window period was there for almost a year. Some took advantage of that open period, but some felt that it wasn't important. You understand? Some felt it wasn't important. So those that felt it wasn't important, in when there is a great injustice, neutrality is a cause. All right? If someone is fighting your father today, and because you don't understand what led to that fight, if you stay neutral, that means you support the person in fighting your father. Some were very neutral. But when it is either you are for the palace or you are against it, there's nothing like neutrality. Even when we're doing this advocacy, I told a whole lot of Benin people that some of you who didn't come out to speak against the Hill thing that Godwin was doing to the palace, I'm still going to count you as among those who supported Godwin because you refuse to speak. You can't speak when someone is beating your father. You're just like, it doesn't concern me. That means you support the person. So eventually, some use that window. And some that didn't use the window were now amounting to 60 something. And those were the ones that eventually were suspended. So I think that's about the numbers, if I get your questions correctly, how many they were and how many were suspended. So about 60 something of them, or officially 68. It used to be 67, but one other name was added recently. So it became 68 of them that were suspended. But originally, those who started it were about 90, whose name appeared originally were 90 something of them. But we have about 120 or thereabout of all the Enigies in Edo land. Enigie in Edo land. Is there a part I didn't answer? Okay. If there's no, so you have to. If there's no part, you have to repeat it.
Okay, I should. No, it's okay. You answered the question already.
Okay.
So can we move on to the next one?
Very well.
Okay. Suspension and disciplinary actions. Were all the rebellions Enigie and Enogie suspended? If not, what were the criteria for the suspension? There have been reports that some names were omitted from the suspension list. Who compiled the list, and why were certain individuals excluded?
Well, that's a sensitive question. I'm going to also answer it very sensitively. The reason why I'm going to answer that very sensitively is that for who I am in Benin Kingdom, people usually take what I say as the position of the palace, whereas they give me too many credit for what I'm not. One of the key reasons where I was arrested was because I said all the recommendations that I gave the palace. The Enigie arrested me was because everything that I said in my live videos was what the palace acted on. But that's not true. I'm just who I am. I even barely go to the palace. I'm just a guy who loves defending the palace. I think that's all I own, the palace. I own the palace and on solemn servitude. The palace doesn't need to tell me anything before I go ahead. In short, if you tell me anything, I won't do it. It's always part of my principle. I do things based on my conviction. If you tell me now, no matter whether it's right or wrong, to do anything, I won't do it. Because I'll feel that I'm doing it for you. I don't like doing anything for anybody. I like doing something for myself out of my own conviction. So why I said it's sensitive is because there might be some certain things I might say now. A lot of people are going to quote me out of the context. Now, it is true that for what I learned, for what I was told, every of these opinions that I'm giving are solemnly my opinion. It is not the opinion of the palace or opinion of another person. It is Imagine Odowa's opinion. It is true that I felt at the beginning that some names were omitted. I was the one who even raised the alarm in the first place. And I also felt that there were about 1 or 2 names that were added to the list that was not even supposed to be there. But that's my opinion. It is not the opinion of the palace. It is not the opinion of another person. Answering that question, there were 2 criteria for what I was told. Those whose name appeared on the list. We'll not discover that there were some people whose name appeared on the list who later apologized, but they were still suspended. So I now raised the alarm. But I was now later told that there was another criteria that I was not aware of. Because the criteria was those whose name appeared on the list and those who physically took picture with His Majesty. With the governor, the then governor. And there was another criteria that was used. Those who received salaries till December last year. December 2024. I wasn't aware that these people were receiving salary. So you cannot say that you are not part of them. You were still receiving salary for over a year. And the norm is that you as an Enogie are supposed to receive salary from Benin Traditional Council, not through the state government. Because that was one of the issues that the Enigie presented, which the Oba declined. They said they want their salary to be received from the state government. And they told them, and the palace told them at that time, were you employed by the state government? You are my employee. They are more like the employee of the palace of the Oba of Benin. If I employ you now and he is paying your salary, that means automatically he employed you. So the Benin Traditional Council is the only council that can pay salary. At that time, some people wrote, some Enigie, one young and some Enogie, he wrote, and he said, "It's Odowa. I think I just got married at that time. The letter was around August 2023. I just got married. Immediately I got married, about 2 days. He wrote a letter and he said I should read it even before. I was the one who published it in the public. What the Enogie had said at that time is that I don't need your money. He was talking to the governor. If anybody is to pay me money, it's the Benin Traditional Council. They were the one who employed me in the first place. You have no business paying me directly. You are not my employer. I have no business with you. Keep your money. If you want to pay me, pay what is accrued to Benin Traditional Council and let Benin Traditional Council pay me at their will if they decide to pay me or they don't decide to pay me. But you cannot pay me. The letter is everywhere. Maybe at the end of this section, I'll give you the letter. Maybe you people can play it. So that was a man who has integrity. And it was his own integrity that the palace used in the second criteria. That you cannot say you are for the palace, yet you were collecting salary for over 1 year from the same state governor. So it was not necessarily those whose name appeared on the list. There were some that the name did not appear on the list. There were some that didn't take pictures with the governor, but they were receiving salary from the governor. And they knew the underlying issues on ground, on how the governor has completely excluded the palace and now be dealing with. The governor are supposed to be dealing with politics because that's who they are. They are now mingling into traditional matters. So they have no business dealing with it. So the 2 or 3 criteria were those whose name appeared on the list, those who physically took picture with the then governor, and those who were receiving salaries. All right. At that time, I had felt that there were some people who took pictures with the governor. Why were they not suspended? Because I was able to pinpoint 1 or 2 persons. at that time that these people were not suspended. They were not on the list of the people that were suspended. And it created an uproar that. So until I was now called and said that the list was not over, they were still ratifying the list, that I shouldn't have concluded. Maybe I concluded too early. You wouldn't blame me, because those who compiled the list, I don't know who they are, but they are chiefs of the palace of the Oba of Benin. They didn't face what I faced. I went to jail for this. I was victimized. My family was threatened. My widowed mother was threatened. My wife was threatened. My entire family were threatened. So now, when it seems like we have gotten victory, you are not covering up for some. And I was like, everybody has to go down. Everybody has to go down. Anybody who committed that atrocity against the throne must go down. And I'm repeating it. If they are still ratifying the list, they should go and ratify it more. Today is 68. If they let them ratify it, if there are more names that they should add. Because I was victimized. So you cannot commit an atrocity against the land, and eventually, one way or the other, your name did not appear. So that was the omission that I talked about. So, but it is not in my place to be the determinant factor of who gets there, who doesn't get there. My place was to voice my anger that I believe that there were some persons who were supposed to appear there that didn't appear based on these criteria. I was not the one who came up with the criteria. All right. It was the criteria that I was told that was used. I said, based on these criteria. This one, I see a picture there. I'm very certain he received salary. So why he not did that list? That was the point I raised at that time. So suspending them is incredible. They have to be suspended. They have to be suspended. Maybe it looks like a child's play, but what they did was not a child's play. Benin Kingdom would have been crushed if they had succeeded. What you call Benin Kingdom today would have stopped existing. What they committed is a treasonable offense. I now see videos almost every day where some village people are now appealing for this Enigie. I frown at that. In short, it's disgusting. I'm angered that they even have a mind to be appealing when we told them what they were doing was wrong. Where were these community people? Why didn't these community people come out and say that what the Enigie was doing is wrong? Not when the deed has been done. If they have succeeded and gotten the freedom that we were hoping to get, we wouldn't have had Benin Kingdom today. So I believe that some names were omitted, but I've already been told that they are still rectifying it. So I'm hoping, I'm praying that the people who the palace are choosing and delegated to do what is right should do what is right. Omit those names that I feel that was omitted, ratify it, let them carry out their investigation. If they actually truly are deserving to be suspended, they should be suspended. And for those who also I feel, my opinion, that were not supposed to be there, they should carry out more research. And those who were not supposed to be there, or one or two, I don't know the numbers, that are not supposed to be there should also be ratified and removed. Because if you commit a sin, you should be punished. But you shouldn't be punished for the sin that you didn't commit.
Mr. Master, thank you for your response. For the benefit of our audience,
okay,
viewers, when exactly did the palace realize that the Enigies and Enigies were collecting salaries from the government directly? When was it brought to their attention? And the time space between when it was brought to their attention and when they took action. Could you give us, the audience, a little feel about what went on there?
Well, that was 2023, because there was a letter that the state government wrote at that time, which was signed by the then Secretary to State Government, Mr. Osaro Ogie, where he said that they were going to establish 7 traditional councils in Benin. At that time, the payment of Benin Traditional Council will go directly to the Benin Traditional Council. Then the payment to other traditional councils, the imaginary traditional councils that are created, will not be done by the state government. I think that letter was sometime around 2023, and it was at the back of that time for the research I found that I think they started paying them directly sometimes around August, because I happened to see a statement of account of one of the Enogie. And I think sometime around August or so, 2023, that's when they started to pay them directly. Because I saw a statement of account of one of the Enogie. I think the first money they ever paid, that they paid that Enogie, was 2 million naira. But after that 2 million naira, 450, 300, 350 or thereabout. That Enogie eventually now wrote to them by January 2024 that he was not interested for their salaries anymore. So I should pin it around that time, since I'm not really too particular now, or I cannot wrap my head around to be able to. If I was able to know the date on that letter, I should have been able to tell you for a fact that this was when I believe they started to pay them. But it should be around that July, August, there about July, August, September 2023. That's when they started to pay them directly. And the BTC salary was withheld for months. I think that's when he started to even release the BTC. Now that the BTC is no longer to pay them, so he was not paying them directly.
So much for that.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Our next question is appointed versus born Enogie or Enigie. There are Enogie and Enigie who were born into the title and those who were appointed. Can a suspended born Enigie have their children step into their role? Can an appointed Enogie or Enigie be replaced by another appointed Enogie or Enigie?
All right. I think beautiful question. Yes. Ogi Koleve. Ogisis were children of the Oba. Ogi Keleve were those ones that there were two categories of those ones that were not of Oba's children. There were ones that they were more of like principalities. Like, for example, the Ogiego. Ogiego featured very prominently that at the time when Oromia came and all of that, he married the daughter of Ogiego, who was an Iride. So that means that principality or that authority was already existing even before the Nogi ship system was created in Benin. So there were some figures that were existing in the times of the Ogiso that were quite prominent. So that eventually, because of their prominence in Benin history, they were elevated to become an Enogie by the Obas of Benin. Now, but there were some, for example, I'm very much aware of the Enogie of Oben in Yekorion, how he became an Enogie. He was sent by one of the then Oba to administer, I think most likely Oba Adolo, Oba Semede, to administer over some certain matters in Yekorion. And he was the Oshodi, he was the chief Oshodi of Benin at that time. So, but when he came back to give reports to the Oba of that time, he told the Oba that he liked a particular section of that area. He would want to be an Enogie. And the Oba of Benin gave him the privilege of becoming an Enogie. Now, that is an appointed Enogie. But the moment you are installed as an Enogie, it's no longer an appointment. It becomes an hereditary. Because the title itself comes with an hereditary conferment. When it becomes an Enogie, you are no longer appointed. It is not hereditary. It means that no other person can eat that Enogie except you and your generations unborn. All right. So these Enigie will now be of the same status. All right. The only thing that separates them, you can say that this one has a royal blood, this one does not have a royal blood, but they have equal status. All right. So when you are treating an Enogie with a royal blood, you're also treating them in the same manner with an Enogie that does not have it. In instance, the Enogie that does not have a royal blood, they are not much in Benin, maybe 15% or maximum 20%. You have more Enogie of the royal blood. There was a reason, because there were always conflicts amongst the princes in Benin. So then one of the Obas, the Nikao, the ancestors of the land, believed that since they were conflict amongst them, so when the elder brother becomes the Oba of Benin, his immediate younger brothers are sent to become what in modern day parlance what the people will call dukes of various other communities. I think that's where the institution of an Enoge started. The institution of an Enoge started, where instead of not having the Oba is not having to deal with the insubordination of his younger brother, you just give some flinks of far-reaching part of Benin for them to hold as an ambassador on behalf of the Oba. The Oba can be everything, but he's God representative on earth, but he's not God. So he's not omnipresent, cannot be everywhere at the same time. So these people were asked to be able to hold forth and give him reports. So that's why we call them Enagi, the ones that were sent to represent the Oba. So they are Oba's ambassadors. So they are representing, they are extending, they are establishing Oba's opinions, Oba's ideas over the far-reaching parts of the old Benin Empire before it became Benin Kingdom. It's the same status of right that these Enoge have. Coincidentally, it's the same status of right is the Oba of Lagos has. It's the same way that Enoge of Ologbo was sent to become an Enoge there. It was the same way that the Oba also sent a Leko of Eko to become an Leko of Eko, which is now called Oba of Lagos. It is the same way that the Enoge of Enya was sent to become an Enoge. It was the same way that the current Olu of Warri was sent from Benin, the same pala, to become the Olu of Warri. So in status of right, the Obas of Lagos, the Obis of Onitsha, the Obi of Iseluku, the Olu of Warris are of the same traditional status, right, with this same Enigie. Like I told you, this is what pains them. But it is what it is. It cannot change. You cannot have the same status of right like the Oba of Benin. Even the far-reaching Oba of Lagos, who is now very prominent amongst kings in Nigeria, Olus of Warris, who are now prominent amongst kings in Nigeria, we still refer to the Oba of Benin as their father, because in reality, he's their father. Except for the children of nowadays who does not understand history, that will not probably, some will not say is their brother. Oba of Benin is not a brother to anybody. He's the father of everybody, the father of all. As far as you are connected to the throne, you remain the subject of the Oba of Benin and a son of the Oba of Benin. So I think it is in the same context of what I have established, that when you become an Enoge, it is not a replacement action. It is an hereditary action. You cannot, Oba Benin cannot remove them now and replace them with another Enoge. But there was a meeting that was done 2 days ago. It explains everything. All right. Oba of Benin have invigorated an aspect of Benin history, which we call the Okao. The Okao system is what he wants to now invigorate. You understand that once you're an Enoge, you cannot be removed as an Enoge. You can only be suspended. And automatically, your first son is in line. Should they be considered ever? Should the palace consider that dukedom to be given an Enoge, maybe after pleading, maybe 10 years, 20 years, 50 years, 100, at the mercy of the Oba of Benin? I don't have a single say. Nobody has a say on that. At the mercy of the Oba of Benin. It could be in the next 100 years. They will have to trace the line of the last Enoge who was suspended and look at the next of kin, the closest to the line that will be made an Enoge. So you cannot wipe that part of history. It's hereditary. When it's given, it's given. It's not taken back. You can only suspend. All right. But there's something that's what gets into their head. Most of these hereditary title holders usually give problem to the Oba of Benin. So, but that's what gets into their head. But there's this history that they do not know, which I want to clarify. Now, if an hereditary title is given to you and the Oba of Benin suspends you, the Oba of Benin, by law, cannot take that title from you. But he can render that title completely useless forever by creating another title and giving your function to that title. So thereby, in perpetuity, you still hold that title, but your function has been taken. Nobody takes your title from you. It's hereditary. You might feel it's hereditary, can never leave my family. Fine. You're under suspension. A title is created, and that title will be given the same function that you are supposed to function, and thereby, nobody remembers you. That is worth. One of the biggest problems that is affecting a lot of Edo people is ignorance. They have not really taken time to study the history. and understanding that the Oba of Benin actually has power to do and undo. But in their minds, when they have attained a certain position, they think that nothing will happen. Something will happen. And the Oba of Benin has proven it. That's something. When you sin, you must pay. They're paying for their sins. And no, I don't think it is even necessary for anybody to start begging. All right? I don't think it is necessary. Sincerely speaking.
Thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next question is future of the sacred institution. What advice do you have for both the suspended Enigies and the Enigies and those still serving? What step must they take to restore their honor and realign themselves with the Oba of the palace?
For those that were suspended, the mistake that they have made, I don't think they can ever, in the next 100 years, I don't think they can ever get respect from the throne anymore. As a matter of fact, it is not. I don't even think that. I feel pity for them. But when I realize the magnitude of what they wanted to do, I don't feel pity for them. You people might not really understand the magnitude of what they wanted to do. Benin Kingdom is one of the most talked about kingdom in the entire world. I have traveled. I instituted an idea in 2017 called Association of Great Benin Descendants. The major reason that Benin is not talked about that Ikwere people, Iseluku people, Ekbeye people, Ogba people, these people, Ishekiri, part of Ishekiri people, the Gap people and all of that. I instituted it. Go take a look at all my videos. I went searching for all Benin descendants and I knew the magnitude of the greatness of Benin Empire. Today, we have been reduced. That is the greatest kingdom in sub-Saharan Africa. We have been reduced to just 7 local governments. And now you want to furtherly divide it into 7. The letter that was written by the state government, what you don't understand, was to share Benin Kingdom into 7. There are 7 local governments that makes the current day Benin Kingdom. So each of the local government will have its own traditional council. And the Oba of Benin will now be administering over just Oredo, where the palace is domiciled. So every other 6 other local government will be administered by any of the Nogi that could have been empowered by the state government to become a traditional ruler. We say Benin Kingdom is too small from what it was before the British came to usurp us in 1897. Now you want to furtherly divide the fragment of what is left. It is an irreparable damage. So what every Obas will do is will find ways to completely reduce the powers of the Enigie. That's what I would do. And I know that's exactly what His Majesty would do. I think that's why they always say that whenever I always give recommendations. But because I think like him. When the Edions of the old, we used to call them the Uzama, we call them now Uzama Neo. In the old, we call them the Kingmakers. The Ulias, the Edohen, the Ero, the Ezomo, and all of that. When they were rebellious to the throne, the Oba of Benin created a title, which is the first chieftaincy title ever to be created in Benin. It's called Niya Sowa, which is the Iyase title. He created that title to reduce the power of these powerful Edion who used to see themselves as Oba's mates. Oba was just first amongst equal in Paris. First amongst equal, they were all mates. But Oba Benin, okay, now our senior brother. No, not senior brother, our senior guy. That's how they used to look at the Oba Benin. But the Oba Benin, I said, okay, these guys are very disrespectful. I'm going to start dealing with them. He created a title and gave them all the powers that these people had. He withdrew that power from them, gave it to Iyase. Now, how can you create Iyase and you make him that powerful and you make his title hereditary? That is why Iyase is not an hereditary title. But one point has been made. He has created a very powerful title by reducing another people's powerful title. Other subsequent Oba, after about 400 years, these Edion proved to be also stubborn again. Another Oba Obaisege further reduced their power by creating a junior Uzama, because though their power has been reduced 400 years earlier, but they were still bragging that without them no Oba is crowned. In short, they threatened the particular Oba Obaisege that they won't crown him. Eventually, everything was settled. When the Oba was not crowned, it created a replica of them. That should these guys become high-handed in the future, fall to these other 7, they will be in charge of the coronation processes. So everything that the Obas of Benin have always known, they understand the intricacies of politics of the monarchical system. So going forward, what every subsequent Obas will be very mindful of is how to quash the power of this Enigie. The Enigie, whether they are all recalled back or not, one thing I can guarantee you, they will never be relevant again in Benin Kingdom. They have ruined that chance for themselves and for their children unborn. And that is why I said something that just 2 days ago, the Oba of Benin wants to invigorate a particular part of the tradition by instituting the Okaoship. Now, the Okaoship now is a way to reduce the power of the Enigie, even if they are recalled or not. Because you have to look and think as a king. How do I ensure that this thing do not happen in the next 50 years? How do I ensure that any bad governor cannot come and use these people against me again? That's what the king should think of. And when you think about that, the next thing you want to do is to completely want to reduce their power in perpetuity. So what they have done is that they have made themselves so useless, and even in a way affected those ones that are not part of this rebelliousness. That the pedestal that we used to put them, they will no longer have it because of self-centeredness and greed. So my advice is, I don't know how they are going to do it to earn the trust of the Oba back, but they should understand that it will no longer be the way it used to be. The trust has been broken, and the people who broke the trust are most of them are blue bloods. It is not commoners that rebelled. That is why it's even more painful. Most of them, 90% of them, if not more, are royal bloods. So, will they ever be recalled? Is the that has to be at the mercy of the Oba of Benin, whether he recalls them or not. It is, I don't have that power. Nobody does, like I always say. It is the Oba of Benin prerogative of whether to recall them back or not. They might surely be recalled back, but it might not be them. Most likely their children. But they should know that they will no longer command the power that they used to. Because I don't think any Oba will want this kind of a thing to ever repeat itself futuristically. So every Oba now will now start to create policies to reduce. I have seen it work. Like I said, it's because of a lot of people are so ignorant of the history. If they understand the history of the Edo, they will understand that the moment you rebel against the palace, if you are recalled back, but before you are recalled back, the palace will find a way to ensure that they make your power so diminished that in the next 50, 100 years or 500 years, you might not even get your way back to the power that you used to have. And I feel sorry that it has to happen this way. I have to blame them for allowing greed and self-centeredness to use them, and I also have to blame the governor, the former governor, who the devil used, or who used himself to cause the kind of chaos that he caused. But I thank God and our ancestors that he didn't prevail. Like I will always say, Edo Giawiri. Edo is insurmountable. Oba talk by
Thank you very much.
Mr. Maxwell, just a follow-up question. Assessing the suspension decision. You talked about basically some names not from your informed knowledge not appearing on the list of people that were suspended, and that there was going to be a ratified list coming out. If and when that ratified list comes out, and you are aware that those names of those people who were actively involved were not still included, what would your be informed decision going forward?
I would, I would, I would leave those who are supposed to do what is right. I would leave them at the mercy of God and our ancestors. That's what we always say. I cannot do much more than I can. The only thing that I have is just to speak like I'm speaking now. That for what I have known, it is truth, honesty, and integrity that was used to build this land. And it is only that three elements that we can begin to apply to see us get back to where we were supposed to. I always say this. Since I have been actively involved in the socio-cultural matters of Edo land since 2016, I have kept my hands so clean. Nobody can say or will say that I ever did all the things that I have done for this land for selfish reasons. I do not own anybody a penny, and I don't have intention of owing anybody a penny. But I always tell them that this thing that you have done is wrong. Is wrong. And I'm sure that that's why a whole lot of them do not like me, because I tell them that this thing that you have done is wrong. If those who were supposed to appear on the list do not appear on the list, I leave them in the hands of God and our ancestors. And that's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir.
In the power of seats. There's the same thing. The Enigie, though they are part of the government, but they have their respective domains to preside over within the Benin Kingdom. Why? The chiefs are to perform their respective functions day to day with the palace of the Oba of Benin, but it depends on the classes of the chiefs. It's quite a very broad topic. All right. You have Egawonogbe, the town chiefs. You have, Egawonoe, the town chiefs. Then you have the Egawonogbe, the Ogbe chiefs, the chiefs that are meant to be with the Oba of Benin. Even within the classification of the chiefs, that is outside the Enigie now, even within the classification of the chiefs, some are still a bit distant from the palace, while some are fully domiciled within the day-to-day. So, but to be within the Egawonogbe chiefs, you have to be within the Ogbe environment. Then any Benin man is qualified to be an Egawonogbe chiefs, the town chiefs, and they have some certain days of the week that they are allowed to join the Oba on day-to-day matters that concerns the palace. But Egawanogbes are almost more or less the people who deals with the Oba from day to day. And there are other categories of other chiefs that are not even in these categories. And then within the Egawanogbe, you have different court group. We call them court because court is not in negative sense. Court group means a sort of a particular group that shares similar ideas. So you have the Iwebo, you have the Iwegwa, you have the Ibiwe, and you have other classes within the Egawanogbe, but these three are the most prominent. Then the Egawanogbe, you now talk about some that are very prominent amongst the four of these Egawanogbe. The most prominent amongst the four of them is the Yasser, which is number one, the Esogban, which is number two, the Eson, which is number three, the Osuma, which is number four. These are the four most powerful chiefs in Benin Kingdom. Now, then we'll not talk about the Enigie. The Enigies, like I had established, they are the ambassadors. They represent the interest of the palace at wherever they have been domiciled or held. And what information that they will need to do is transmitted directly from the palace. And it is the chiefs that is not like an interference between, or an interface rather, between the dukedoms, the dukes, and the king. All right. So most times, some of these Enigie really do not have direct access to the Oba of Benin. So that's why interface were created between some of these chiefs. So hierarchically, these chiefs takes more prominence hierarchically than them. But because they were given more freedom than these chiefs, they now begin to believe in the minds of their minds that they are higher hierarchically than some of these chiefs, but whereas in truth they are not. While you say the Iyase, you say Iyase of Benin Kingdom. That is the Iyase that there's only one Iyase in the entire Benin Kingdom. Iyase Ogedoya. But if you are referring to any Enogi, you are referring to Enogi of Olugbo. You cannot say Enogi of Benin Kingdom. So the Enogi is domiciled around his small cycle that is giving power to administer over. But Iyase can act on behalf of the Oba of Benin concerning the matters of Benin Kingdom, not the Enoge. Enoges are more restricted or confined to a particular section of the kingdom. But the chiefs of the Oba of Benin are representing the interest of the Oba of Benin as far as Benin Kingdom is concerned. But the Enoge, on the other hand, are only representing the interest of the Oba of Benin in their confined zone, not in the general sense of it. So they are just ambassadors. That's why I said that constitutionally, when they were listing it, you have to list all of these powerful chiefs. Then you look at another class of chiefs, which I don't agree that they are chiefs. They are not chiefs. I refer to them as a Dion, Uzamani Iyon, because in the old, they were elders of the land. I talked about them a little bit further. You also look at them as another class of people within the Benin organogram, the Benin traditional organogram. They are quite very powerful figures. All right. But in all of this, all of them work hands in hands. That is how all of them has to interface, has to find a way to bond. Most times during the Noge now, if there are peculiar issues like insecurities, food problems, and all of that, they will have to also work with the palace so that palace can provide some of these jobs for them. But over time, some of these Enige no longer perform their function. You now have a lot of Enige now who doesn't stay in their dukedoms again. They now stay in Benin City, trying to, I don't know whether they're trying to share Benin City from the Oba of Benin. So where their primary, in NYC, we'll call them PPA, their primary place of responsibility, Abi, they are no longer doing there. They are no longer there. They are now in city. They are saying that their own place where they were given is now is a rural area, and now they go to government house and share money, and the money they are being given, they don't even take that money. So how do you translate development from the city center? You translate by it was another way of ensuring that development gets to the rural areas. Because if you're an Enoge, you stay amongst your people. You should be able to know the social amenities that your people lack, and you should be able to bring it forth to the palace, and the palace should be able to relate you to the state government. They are no longer doing that. The only thing that they do is that if a bit of development has gotten to where they were administering over, and they are not selling lands, they go there every weekend, sell land, mop up money, come to Benin. Some goes to party, some goes to club. You see some in Beria, and they are spraying a whole lot of money and all of that. That becomes the order of the day. And they were not willing to talk about that. They were not really to talk about their bad behavior, but they were ready to fight the palace. But these are some of the things. In all of this, I want to say one thing very clear. When God gives you power through the Oba of Benin and our ancestors, you have to hold it jealously. You have to guide it jealously. These people they neglected what was given to them, and they didn't guide it jealously. So coming back to your question, they all work in hand. Hierarchically, I've established the chiefs. There are so many chiefs that are more powerful than these Enige. But the only rectal advantage that they have is most of them are blue bloods. In Benin, when you're doing classifications, you say Obas and his children, the royal house. The royal house has a purview of respect that they command. Do you understand? Has a purview of the respect that they command. So you have to put them in that place. Because if you're buying, if an Enoge is sitting here and a chief is sitting here, while not that the Enoge is higher in terms of status than a chief, but because he's a direct son of the Oba, is a royal blood, you will accord him respect first. I'll give you an example. During my marriage, at the reception, the chairman of the occasion was Prince Agatise Seridia, who is the immediate younger brother of the current Oba of Benin, immediate. Now, but the father of the day was the Iyase of Benin. All right, I like to look at what's going on. I'm always very inquisitive when interests like this are meeting. So when they brought the kola nut, they have to naturally give it to the Iyase. But the Iyase did not break the kola nut. He said he has to take permission from the prince before he can break. And now we are saying that Iyase is the traditional prime minister. Hierarchically, you don't, although in Benin you don't classify, Oba is just on his own pedestal. Then after the Oba, you have to start classification. The next is the Iyase of Benin. So he's the most powerful chief in Benin. But the Iyase still accord the respect of him being a royal blood and saying that the prince has to grant him the right to pray for the kola nut. So don't forget that prince can later tomorrow be made an Enogie. Not that he's powerful than the Iyase, but he's accorded the respect because he's a royal blood. And in Benin, we say that Oba or Yoma Soma, Oba enables a man to be greater than another man. All right, he could be doing better than me in all socio-cultural, socio-political, socio-economical spheres of life as a Benin man. But by the time Oba gives me a chieftaincy title, he has enabled me beyond him, and he has to accord me that respect. So because Oba has enabled this Enigie as his children, they not take a more of like an advantage, not power now. They now have a sort of a traditional advantage over these chiefs because they have royal blood. So I don't know whether the viewers will understand the perspective I'm speaking from, because some of these things, if you don't listen very well, you won't be able to grasp it. It's the complications in Benin history. Why the chiefs are more powerful, like I have established, but these Enigie takes precedence in terms of respect, in terms of glamour, because of them being royal sons and daughters. But that is where we had to now draw. One thing has to be now be clear. Not all of these Enigie are royal bloods. So that's why the confusion usually comes. If a chief is respecting you because of a royal blood, you will have to find out first if you're actually a royal blood as an Enogie. If you're not an Enogie, if you're an Enogie but you are not royal blood, automatically it does not owe you that respect. Because what is separating, what is making an Enogie to sort of have an advantage over a chief is because he's a royal blood. Royal bloods don't eat chiefs in the palace. You understand? They become Enigie. So that is about this thing. But if you are within the palace cycles, you will understand this thing more. That it is only a respect. These chiefs accord respect to this Enigie because of their royalty, not in the context of power. In the context of power, the chiefs hold more power than this Enigie. It is these chiefs that are writing this Enigie's name and giving them suspension. Oba Benin do not go from village to village. Oba Benin do not compile list. It is the same chiefs that will say this has a very bad behavior. Let's suspend him. Like I said, the power of the Oba Benin is not autocratic. He has his council. The council, which is the councillors, are these chiefs. They are the one who counsels him. Before decisions are reached, it has to be talked about. It has to be discussed. Except on some certain occasions where he has to use his veto power. They'll say that, although this is what you said, but I do not agree. This is it. But that is on very few occasions. The Oba Benin has to listen to his chiefs to be able to guide him, because the chiefs are more in tandem with the reality of what is going on ground. The current Oba of Benin, which I'm very certain of, is not on social media. It doesn't know what nonsense anybody is talking on social media. It doesn't care. So, but it has to rely people to give him information on what is going on there. So the people who determines your fate, you cannot say that they are not powerful more than you. It is the chiefs that determines the fate of the Enigie, whether to be suspended, a very good example, or not. So you cannot say those are beneath you. When they are discussing your matter, it is the same thing it is the same chief that can plead whether to leave you or not. You cannot say that they are not powerful because you have a royal blood, but they respect you because you have a royal blood. Respect is not the same with authority or power. They have more power than the Enigie, but these Enigie command more respect than them because of their royalty. So I think that's about what you should understand.
That's very clear. Thank you very much. For a final question.
Okay.
Final words of advice. As a historical wide recognized by many, including Prince Joseph Ogeon, what critical advice would you give to the Enigie regarding their relationship with the Oba and the palace at this pivotal time?
They should understand that Oba is the breath that they breathe. Oba is not God. Get it? Even if when Oba of Benin wants to pray, this is how he prays, by the power of God and our ancestors. Benin recognizes the absolutism of God Almighty. Oba is not God, but Oba is the head that every Benin man breathes. So if you have that in your head, you won't do what they won't do what they have done. And most especially, it's even better for us. I can decide to flout or disobey what the palace represents. I'm supposed to be wearing bead now. I can't, because there's a ban on beads. That's what makes me a Benin man. Irrespective of where I am, the Oba have said, because of they are currently doing the burial of the Yoba, nobody should wear bead. If you want to wear bead, wear Omonoro, the white bead. I don't have the white bead, so I'm not wearing. So that's the extent we revile. In the old, when the Oba said, jump and die, what you say as a Benin man is, how high do you want me to jump? Not I won't die. I know I cannot die. That's the pedestal Benin man holds the Oba. If they see the Oba as that, they won't do what they have done. You don't take side with an enemy. If you have issues with your father, you find a way to rectify it. You find a way, not joining forces with outsiders to reduce that which made you who you are. There's an Enogie that I'm way older. I'm well schooled than the suspended Enogie of Ogwa. I'm well lettered than him, socioeconomically, I'm way better than him. I have everything more than him. But if I see him before they were suspended, I would kneel down. Okay, man, I talk about it. I can't even look at his face. But now, come with me if I beat him. Oba Yoma Soma. We respected them. The respect that they command is because of the Oba of Benin, not them. We don't give a damn about them. Benins are naturally rebellious. It is only the Oba of Benin that keeps up in checks. If there wasn't Oba of Benin in Benin, that's why when you go to communities, they'll tell you that now Oba of Benin will fit tell us what we will fit do here. Every other person, including the governor, can't tell us anything. That's because that is what makes us. It doesn't make us weak. We're not weaklings. If we were weaklings, we wouldn't have been able to achieve all the things that we achieved before the British came. We did the ordinary. Nobody defeated us in war. We expanded. Half of the current day Yoruba land, which was ours. The entire southern region, we owned them. These were not people who were lazy. These were people who were born warriors and fighters. We weren't weak. Giving absolute authority to the Oba of Benin didn't make us weak. It is a sense of loyalty to a leadership, and a leadership who stood. The Obas of Benin of the old used to lead their people to war, until when one of their Obas was badly injured in war, that led to the Iwu body marking that we now wear on our shirts. It used to be on our body part, or by Hembuda. We now place a stop that Oba of Benin should not be leading his people to war. Instead, the Iyase should be the one to lead the people to war. So they weren't lazy either. But when they stopped leading their people to war, our empire started to decline. Because waiting person using hand do and waiting person send person me go do for now, two different things. That's how Benin Empire started to decline. That's where the greatest time in Benin history, where we were powerful, is between 17th and 16th century, where you have the 5 warrior kings of Benin. These warrior kings, starting from Ewai to Ozolwa, to Esige, to Orogboa, and Ehengbuda, they carried Benin to war themselves. So when Ehengbuda stopped carrying us to war, that's when we started to decline. Because the chiefs were now sending, were using half mind to do what they were saying. So the reality is, the Enigie should understand that as far we exist as a people, the Oba is a supreme being amongst us. And we must accord him every single respect that he truly deserves. And doing that, you are on your peace. Those Enigie now that didn't fight the palace, it is the best decision every day when they wake up. They'll say this is the best decision to ever happen. Because in any moment from now, they'll start seeing their contemporaries, former Enigie, roaming on the streets of Benin, begging for food. Some of these Enigie, some of them will sell one land and have 40 million. It was not because of hunger that they were fighting the palace. How much? I just told you about the statement of account that was printed. How much was it paying them? 2 million. That's not even up to a plot of land in some of these Enigies communities. Some were stinkingly rich. Some were almost a billionaire from the wealth accrued from their land. Most especially those that were in communities that has oil, crude oils and all of that. Then you forgo those things because of a stipend of 500,000 or 1 million. That one person who probably did not grow, whose family lineage has an history of betraying this land. You listen to them and you fight the same throne that your forefathers once sat on. The same throne that made you who you are. That's why I said I don't pity them. But sometimes I want to pity them, I don't pity them. My advice to them is, at this very critical time, they have to do all that they can to earn the trust of the Oba of Benin and find a way to appeal to him, not the ones that they are doing individually in their respective communities. That will not work. You know, they all came together to fight the Oba of Benin. And why are they no longer together? To also appeal to His Majesty. So they should also come together. This is the time they need themselves. United in division. They also be united in unity.
Yes.
So they should all come together now to now appeal. Let them do press conference. Let them appeal collectively. Let them do press conference. Let them appeal. Let them reassure His Majesty that it will not happen again as far their line continues to exist. He's a father. He will definitely listen to the appeal. But hand will meet them. They'll suffer some more. Because that's when they will now realize what they did is wrong. Yes. If they don't suffer now, if they appeal now and they expect that the Oba should forgive them now, the next government comes, they won't think twice. So that's why, if I have it in my way, if a lot of Benin, if you tell them that Palace should forgive them, they'll say never. That if they have their way now to carry gun, go kill all of them. I'm telling you, that's how that bad. We went through hell. You won't understand. A lot of you people were not involved in the struggle and the fight. We went through hell. One even called one of my friends and said that he dreamt that they defeated the Oba. One of the Enogie that he dreamt, say, now we all can't get Benin now. So now you're the Ogbe. So that's how rebellious they were. When they were rebelling, they were happy about it. They felt that freedom has come. That the palace has been the one impeding their freedom. But it's the palace that gave you the position that now makes you to now feel that they are impeding your freedom. If the palace had not made them a no-gay, they won't. Do you think that the governor now can invite me to come to the government house? The governor only invited them to come to the government house because the palace had made them a no-gay. So that is, the palace has enabled them. So that one that gave you the power, the command, the respect, you said you don't longer want to serve him, that you want to serve another. And what he has simply done is that since you say you no longer want to serve me, I do not also want to see you there anymore. Because don't forget, these Enigie are not ancestrally from these communities that they preside over. The village of the Oba of Benin is Ogbe. So every princes and princesses of this realm, their village is Ogbe at Ring Road. So it's simply saying that come back to your village. And that one that I have sent you to, no. When you send Peking go school, you don't know how. You will recall and say, me come follow you, sit down. If you are a truck pusher, you say, oh yeah, my Peking school, no, your brain not cash school. Come follow me, the drive truck. What the Oba have told them that you can no longer, you have failed as an ambassador. So I'm recalling you back. And that's what a good father would do. Instead of putting all those people in problem, since he has failed us, is to call them back so that they can come and sit down. I even heard there's no space at Ogbe, so they know where they want to go. So, but that's on a lighter note. But the truth is, they have a lot of work to do. They must prove again their loyalty. If they are able to prove it, I'm sure the palace might forgive them.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your time. Really appreciate.
Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, we've been speaking with Mr. Maswen